Twilight Princess is better than Ocarina of Time. Not convinced? Well then let me convince you. So Legend of Zelda, the flagship power monster that feeds Nintendo's souls of wallets. It's probably one of the most devastating franchises Nintendo has ever produced. And one of the biggest challenges for Nintendo is to make the franchise go 3D for the N64. So what does that mean? Well, making 3D games back in 1996, well, there wasn't any handbooks, but they knew they had to make a game way better than Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. I'm not really sure why people compare A Link to the Past to any other 3D Zelda game, but that Zelda title on the NES actually had an expansive world. So Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time had to have an even bigger world. So the dev team got to work, and I mean they were really at work because it took them 3 years of time to actually develop this game. And it originally started on the N64 DD. But when they knew that the N64 disc system wasn't gonna be, fully operable and could probably suck compared to the PlayStation, they just released the game after a long development cycle. And when they finally released the game, it got all the critical acclaim that you can actually say without telling the company that they're gonna go out of business. But what made this game so famous back in 1998? What made it play so much better than Metal Gear Solid? Well, this game is so epic. You can ride on horses while shooting arrows and teleporting shit. It was fucking sweet. In Tomb Raider, you're bouncing around shooting at motherfucking bears and shit. Legend of Zelda, I'm killing motherfucking dinosaurs with a sword. Boy, I can't wait to pound some dodongos in that ass. And that's the reaction people had when they played Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the first time. To this very day, people still talk about this game like it's one of the greatest of all time. And what helped Zelda 64 keep that title is the re-release that came out on the 3DS, which is actually a better and more updated version of the one that came out for 64. You could say Ocarina of Time actually took a lot of Zelda traditions and turned them into sacred ceremonies that the fan base loves, such as the iconic characters that appear in this game, and the iconic music that goes on to appear in even more games. But which Zelda game came out and took all of those sacred traditions of Zelda Ocarina of Time, smashed them into little tiny pieces, and reassembled them into an innovative sculpture? Well, certainly it wasn't Twilight Princess. I would actually give that distinction to A Link Between Worlds because it kind of earns this claim. But Twilight Princess clearly predates the 3DS game, and it was very, very innovative when it was in 2006 when the game first got re-released. For the Wii, because Twilight Princess was initially developed for the GameCube, but seeing how the Wii is about to come out, let's have it come out for the freaking Wii too. And nowadays, since The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD did so well on the Wii U, let's re-release Twilight Princess for the Wii U and give some people something to talk about on the internet, such as the innovations of Twilight Princess and what it added to the Legend of Zelda lore over Legend of Zelda 64. And I could break down these 3 innovations all according to gameplay, story, and overall presentation that Twilight Princess has. Now let's start with gameplay, because what video game is, well, good without gameplay, unless you count Miitomo. Ocarina of Time went out of its way of becoming the most immersive, interactive Zelda game with its mission on giving the player a real-life Zelda experience, or close to real life as possible, because remember, it's on the N64. Still though, with being on the N64, they take us through a coming-of-age story with Link starting as a young boy. Upon conquering different dungeons and just traveling through the land, Link gets different items. But here's the kicker. There are certain items that he was using as a child, but once he becomes a man, once you get to that level and you pull that sword out of the freaking stone, certain items are actually not usable, but now new ones are. I would say that really doesn't make a lot of sense, seeing how, certain weapons should be accessible for all ages. But being able to use certain items at certain age actually gives the game a feel of progression. And speaking of progression, one of the biggest things about Ocarina of Time is the ocarina itself. It's an instrument that you can actually control. And by control, I mean you can actually play like the Simpsons theme on this. This thing allows you to freaking play the Simpsons. Nintendo has been teaching gamers how to make music on their own fucking controllers. Isn't that amazing? And the title or ocarina isn't just limited to just teleporting you across the land and unlocking a couple of dungeons. You can manipulate the world around you by changing the time of the day to night, which was a big effing deal back in the N64 days. There are other gameplay innovations about Zelda 64 that everybody loves, such as the Z targeting, which would have been necessary since you're now playing in 3D, and being able to select 3 different items and assign them to different places on the C-stick, which was a little bit different from Link to the Past because you only could equip with just one weapon. Yeah, I think Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time really improved in that category. Personally though, I think the best thing about Ocarina of Time is being able to ride on a horse and just dick around Hyrule. How does Twilight Princess smash all those innovations that the N64 version has created? Well, by going the extra mile, kids. And let me tell you, when you control Link in Twilight Princess, you can actually control the motion of his sword. Yeah, that's right, motion controls, which was the innovator of the Wii, which I bet will be revisited by Nintendo when they realize the Wii was their greatest console they ever created. I know that's up for debate, but only time will tell. But Twilight Princess is the first Zelda game with Wii motion controls. However, the Wii U version actually has more of a gamepad type of gameplay style. Personally, I prefer the Wiimote, and that really affects how the game actually plays, because now riding on a horse actually takes more of an aim to actually hit these enemies, but they're not just coming from you steering the controller, it comes from you steering the Wiimote. The nice thing is now you can actually switch weapons with the press of just, well, a button, and it makes it a lot easier going through these dungeons where you gotta switch the boots on and off. So now we don't have another water temple fiasco, and instead of Link becoming a grown man, he becomes a grown wolf, and he maws the shit out of enemies. Now I know a lot of people actually like Navi, but actually no, nobody fucking like Navi. Everybody likes Midna. She comes along when Link becomes a wolf, and now we got a sexier Navi to look at. Well, at least Midna's voice is kinda cute. But since I'm talking about characters now, I think it's about time that I compare the 2 stories of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time to the Twilight Princess. Now I gotta stop and think, how do I convince you that this beautiful coming-of-age story of a young boy going out and saving the world is a lot better than hearing some dark, dreary story about a little boy becoming a wolf? Well, he's more like a teenager and he has to save the world as a wolf, but that's still impressive on its own. Ask Michael J. Fox. Seriously, Legend of Zelda's synopsis kind of plays like, a common fairy tale. The great king of evil, Ganon, is at it again, except this time he's more fulfilling a Gerudo prophecy, and for some reason he's a grown man and not a giant pig man. Is there any relation to this character and Link? Not really, other than the fact that they both have Triforces. It's Link's job to gather up all the sacred protectors of each crystal and go out and stop him somehow. That is if you're trying to pay attention to the story. If you're not, it's just basically go gather all the MacGuffins and kill everything that you see in the process. And then by the end of the game, you'll have enough power to stop Ganon and save Zelda. It's pretty basic, and it's always been that way ever since Legend of Zelda on the NES. Now I know there is a lot more weight to the story, I just never felt it. I always felt that this story was as light as a feather. It's something that you could actually tell your child before they go to sleep, and they would be happy for hearing it. But if I told them the real story of how it happened, it would actually make them very upset. And the real story is the Majora's Mask story. And that's another story, because my point is just saying that The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time didn't really have any emotional weight to it, besides when the Deku Tree died? Now Twilight Princess takes aspects from both games, both the Majora's Mask and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, into building a mysterious but heroic tale of Link simply trying to save his village from some Boblins. But once he becomes more involved with the Twilight World, Midna, and the Twilight Princess, which is basically the Dark World, he finds himself becoming the hero, and now he must prevent the Dark World from taking over the Light World. And I know I keep calling it the Dark World, and it's really called the Twilight. However, I just see so many similarities from the Dark World. I think this is how they wanted us to see the Dark World in 3D, and not how it was supposed to be seen on our SNES. Now what makes this game interesting is that instead of Ganon as the main enemy, we now have Zant. Now don't get me wrong, I'm still a follower of Ganon, but by this point if you played Smash, you know that Ganon at some point will show up in the story. But that's what's kept me playing. I really want to see where the heck does Ganon come in? Because he was already in the freaking intro cutscene in Zelda 64, I already got a freaking clear view of what my villain is looking like. But in Twilight Princess, that's not the case. Mystery is like a big theme amongst the Twilight. I really didn't know where the story was going or who the new characters were, because the game didn't feel like a Zelda game we previously once knew. It wasn't as light as Wind Waker. It was more deviant. Twilight Princess introduced new characters in a new setting that were not seen in Legend of Zelda ever before. And while you could say Majora's Mask kind of fulfilled that depressing Zelda story before this game, I will say it's depressing on the sense of that happened to other characters. But what about what's happening to Link in Twilight Princess? When Link accesses the Twilight, he is stripped of his humanity and left as a wolf. Tragic as that may be, this isn't the first time Link has actually ventured into a new world where he has to take on a new appearance. He had to become a bunny in the Dark World in Link to the Past. However, we really don't get to play much as a bunny, and we get to play a lot more as a wolf, because let's face it, it's a lot more fun playing as a giant freaking wolf instead of a tiny bunny. It just points more to the tragic aspects of Twilight Princess. Whereas in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, you play as a man trying to save the world. I mean, you don't start that way, but granted, you become one. Whereas in Legend of Zelda, you start as a man, and as you go through the game, you get turned into a wolf. Now you must work through the game to get access to become a man once again, which is a much more tragic premise than, say, a boy that doesn't have a fairy all of a sudden just gets summoned by a giant ass tree. Seriously, I don't like the Deku Tree. But overall, the presentation of these two games is what really will allow us to really compare and contrast them, and do it in a simplified manner. Ocarina of Time feels like a Legend of Zelda game. It's triumphant, it's gallant, it's heroic, it's very ideal, and it has that certainty that everything will be okay. Because if all else fails, we can go back in time and fix it. Kind of like the Dragon Balls. While it does make the gameplay innovative, it does make me just look at the story and just say, wow, this really isn't that much of a big deal when you think about it. Whereas Twilight Princess, everything felt urgent. Everything felt as though if this doesn't stop, something's bad's gonna happen. If we don't rescue the kids, they're gonna die. If we don't save this princess, her world is gonna overtake our world. And the world gets more ideal when you think about how gritty it really is, because Link is involved with the story just because of a prophecy. Not because some Deku Tree assigned him to be a part of this. No, it's just because he unknowingly got involved and is unknowingly in part of this story, whether he likes it or not. He went from being a simple farm lad who wrestled bullshit ass animals all day to traveling around the world on all fours. And one moment, the freaking world will look beautiful and clean, and then the next moment, it will be all bleak and gleamed over with twilight, which actually looks really pretty. So no matter how dark this game actually gets, the twilight will always give you a light of hope throughout the game, which is something that's nice. It's a theme in Twilight Princess, and it's why I really love Twilight Princess. Well, now with Skyward Sword kind of taking all of those Twilight Princess innovations and building on them and giving the Skyward Sword better Wiimote controls actually automatically makes this game kind of obsolete in the sense of the innovation. Twilight Princess in a weird way actually doesn't have anything that it can claim. It's not really the first Zelda to actually go HD or to do anything different besides the Wiimote controls. Some may even claim that Twilight Princess is too similar to Ocarina of Time. Me personally, I prefer Twilight Princess. Why? Because you can actually shoot bows and arrows with bombs tied to them. Now, that's something that I love doing in freaking Ocarina of Time. They just one-upped it in freaking Twilight Princess. And that is why I believe that it's better than freaking Ocarina of Time. What do you guys think? Do you prefer The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time over Twilight Princess? Or do you prefer vice versa? Or do you just prefer other better Zelda games than the both of them? I'm not gonna criticize you on whether or not you like Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess over Ocarina of Time, and since you guys heard me talk about freaking Zelda for freaking 15 minutes, I really want to know how you guys feel. I mean, why don't you just leave it in the comments, or hit me up on my Twitter, or on my Facebook. Either way, Legend of Zelda is a very, very, very exciting series that everybody loves, and no matter what, they're always masterpieces of games. But to be honest with you, to this day, the most masterpiece of Zelda is to be able to freaking ride Epona and to dick around and play my own music while I do it. This is me singing in the shower. Now this is me singing in the shower to riding on Epona. I love freaking Zelda. I love freaking Zelda.